Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Common Good Podcast. Nice to have you along with us today. Our second installment this week. So we're doing the best we can to be with you a couple of times a week. And some of you know that we do a lot of politics conversation around here, but we also talk about what faith means in America, what faith means to individuals, what faith means in our culture with different faith leaders and faith actors. So I'm super excited to have Pete Nunnally here. Pete, thanks for being on the podcast.
Hey, Doug. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure, and I'm excited to chat with you.
So, Pete, when I was thinking about what I was going to put on the little banner below your name over there, so who is Father Pete Nunnally? I mean, I could have said, as I do in some of these descriptions, you're a Episcopal priest, you're a fisherman. At the Wild Goose Festival, you're a song leader and guitar troubadour. In the midst of that, you've now started a community, a spiritual community in Virginia called Water and Wilderness. You're an author. You've got quite a pedigree, my friend.
I sound pretty cool when you say it all like that.
You sure do. You sure do.
Yeah.
What am I missing, or what's most exciting to you about all those different things that you're up to right now?
Well, think about you sharing that. I'm an old camp counselor. And the foundation of my faith still comes from and is only enhanced by my experience at an Episcopal summer camp called St. George's in the mountains of Virginia. And so it takes all those different things, right? And to be a deeply faithful person, it's an embodied thing, which is physical. I think it has to be something that involves the environment, being outside, in this gift that God has given us, this garden that we all live in and are a part of. And to be a person of faith is also to be somebody that reads and thinks and tries to know something about themselves. So, and to have a lot of fun too. If it's not hopeful and joyful, I don't know what we're doing here. So that's the music and the fun, song leader part.
I love all that. And most people's experience with church is not that it's outside. It's not that it's hopeful or full of fun. And so people like, you and I and a lot of others who are trying to champion that kind of spirituality, it's a real uphill battle, isn't it? How did you find that path? Like, okay, so yeah, you worked at a Christian camp and you were a camp counselor. But you didn't have to be a camp counselor. Like, there are a lot of other things you could have done. What was it about the kind of embodied Christian spirituality in nature and in community that was more attractive to you than what a lot of people experience, which is that it's an institution and it's a structure and it's a building? You talk to a lot of people about, tell me about your church, and they start talking about the physical building that they meet in or the series of buildings that they have. They don't talk about lakes and streams and fields and mountains.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really big question. And I hear from a lot of people, and I feel it myself up behind. And now I want to start off by saying I love brick and mortar church. I'm an Episcopalian. I like our liturgy. Mm-hmm. I think it has a critique of Christianity in the actual worship itself with a confession. So for a lot of evangelicals, there's not a confession as part of your faith life. And so it's easy to skip that part that maybe we haven't fulfilled our obligations. But I'm also a part of a group called the Associated Parishes for Liturgy and Mission, which started in the 50s with 12 priests that came together over their despair about Sunday morning. That it was lifeless, that it was not as vibrant and too far away from Jesus in a bunch of different ways. And so I sometimes find myself when I'm in traditional service churches or when I'm in brick and mortar churches, I'm looking out there and I'm like, God bless you all. I'm so glad you're here. We could be doing more for you. This could be better. And when I say that to priests, almost all of them will nod their heads and say yeah. Mm-hmm. And, as far as my position and my posture related to the church, I mean, it was always a place that was apart. I grew up the son of an orphan who was taken from his family by the state because of a lot of abuse. And I also grew up, my mother, that was my father. My mother had a tough upbringing as well. I was born without a right ear. This is all plastic surgery that you see here. So my entire life has been one in which I look like I'm mainstream, right? I get all of the stuff that straight white guys get in our culture, but I never felt that way.
Interesting.
And I always felt different. But church was a place where I was loved and accepted. I always knew in a brick and mortar church that something we were doing there was special. I couldn't tell you when I was young that it was holy or sacred, but it was like, we're better to each other here than the people are at school to me. And then at camp, that's really an embodied. It was all outside on the side of a mountain, very rustic. Even the cabins just had screens, so you get a little wet when it rains. And we worshipped outside in an old stone shrine. That is the cathedral of the Diocese of Virginia, is actually an outdoor shrine that was built in the early 20s. And we learned there that everything we do is worship. And I love that. Imagine being 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, and you're learning that everything we do in this world is worship. And then how would you relate to your own life?
Nice.
And your actions if everything we did was worship? And so that stayed with me for a long time, and still informs how I look at the world, how I look at worship itself. And when I came out of seminary, I had really excellent training at my first call at St. Mary's in Arlington with a priest there who was a long-serving rector and very traditional. He was like a walking book of common prayer. I mean, and we were doing all of the services, man. We had Easter Sunday, and then we had Eucharist Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of Easter week. Like everybody else is like at the beach, you know. And I'm really grateful for that because I got that instruction in what the very, very traditional form of the Episcopal tradition is. And, if you're going to play jazz, you need to know the scales. And otherwise you're just making noise. So I feel like I know the scales of our church. And so now when we're doing Water and Wilderness Church, which is fully outside, it's its own full-time church in Washington, D.C., the bones of it are distinctly and recognizably Episcopalian and Christian. And, we're asking ourselves the question, if you could start a new church, what would you keep and what would you throw away? Like, what would you do so that nobody comes to a newcomer and says, you're sitting in my pew? Or nobody says, the kids are making too much noise. It really distracted me today. It's like,
Yeah, it's these competing tendencies, isn't it? Just in life. Look, we can talk about church that way, but it's true across every industry, every part of society. We have these competing pulls and tugs. People want church, and there's something beautiful about a spiritual community, to be special and stand out and not the same as everywhere else. But then you have a question, well, what is it that makes it special and a standout? Like, what is it? The clothes we wear? Is it the words we say? Is it the place we meet? Is it what we do? Is it the attitude we have? Like, how do we pick the standout nature of it? And you want people to have a sense of community and belonging in a place where they know when they walk in, they can hang their coat, or where they go to sit. But then you don't want somebody to be like, hey, you're in my pew, or you took my hanger, or you said the wrong words, and we say special words here and you said them the wrong way. That's just a real human tension, isn't it? Of how do we create moments of meaning and significance, and also have the freedom and the flexibility and the openness to say it really matters and doesn't matter at all at the same time, right? That kind of, go where the wind blows and where it will, but also, hey, let's meet every week together at the same time and do a thing with each other. And anybody who's ever had to organize a weekly meeting of any variety, let alone something as complex as a church service, knows 52 weeks weighs on someone like, the weight of an oncoming train. Like, you kind of run out of ideas about what you're going to do the next week with nothing but openness and freedom. And, so you start to find some repeating patterns, and people say, I kind of liked it that way. How are you doing that with Water and Wilderness Church, which is now, you're in the early days here, right? You're newly started.
So we've been doing it in some form for about 3 years.
Okay.
But our launch as a full-time church in the Diocese of Washington was this Sunday. We had 60 people. Can I tell you this? We had 60 people. We had a cookout afterwards. During the service, there's like some commotion. We're doing a homily, and it's a discussion homily. So what did you hear in the gospel? I'm trained. I'm going to tell you what I want to tell you. But what I really am excited about is how other people experience the gospel, because that's when it becomes living, right? Is when people say, oh, that reminds me of the story of my own life. And then when we take our story and graft it onto the story, then it becomes alive again. So we're people are sharing their stories, and there's some commotion over there. And a kayaker had paddled up and got out and joined us. He was like, I heard you guys singing, and I thought, I think that's a church. I want to come see what that's about. And he joined us, and he stayed for the cookout. He's gonna be there this Sunday, which is like super cool.
I love it.
So
you're off and running now officially. So you had some warm up. You've had some connections, but now it's like you did it last Sunday. Are you doing it again this coming Sunday?
Every Sunday.
So here we go.
Sunday, 5 p.m. It'll be 3 p.m. once we change the clocks.
Okay.
And we do other stuff too. We have online book studies. Our next book study starts next week, and it's for everybody. Like most churches, when they do a book study, it's like, this is the St. Mark's book study, but ours is for everybody, anywhere. And it's on a book called The Gate of Heaven is Everywhere.
Okay.
You might remember that quote from Thomas Merton.
Right.
And then we do these in-person retreats at educational marine labs where they take us out in the field, and you get to like hold sea urchins and seahorses and learn about God's ecology in the marine environment, all through the lens of theology and experiential spirituality, which is like that's what God's calling us to. The earth is calling us home.
Yeah, I love it.
Like it's calling it like God's heartbeat. Everybody hears God's heartbeat in nature. That's why we go to the mountains, we go to the ocean. We don't go to church anymore, but we go to those places, right? And I think I have to say one more thing about kind of like what generates this for me is like, so many of my family and friends don't go to church anymore, especially my friends. We grew up going to camp. We worked at summer camp together, but they say, Pete, I don't get anything out of going to church. And I have personally dated many people who were like, I don't like going to church. I don't get anything out of it. And when I talk to people in the church about that, they nod their heads and they're like, yeah. I mean, my sister said during COVID, we take walks with our family in the local parks on Sunday morning, and we get so much more out of that than we ever got going to church. And I'll tell that to a priest, and they'll nod their head and say, yeah, I'll bet that's true. And so I'm thinking, well, if we're all agreeing that that's kind of true for some people, then there ought to be something for those people, because what we have in the Christian tradition can save the world. And it is what people are yearning for and thirsting for, but we got to lower the barriers for entry, and we got to meet people where they are and say, you were probably hurt by the church. At the Wild Goose Festival, you're around so many people that were hurt by the church, and it's real. And so they don't want to come back. But what if we can go to them and say, hey, do you believe in love, justice, mercy, and forgiveness? We do too. And so this is a community that we want to be a part of. And it decenters some of the hegemony and the patriarchy and the historical racism that comes with a more traditional looking church. And that's intentional too, that we see ourselves as part of the community of creation. I think Bill McKibben says that we're the community of creation. And I was thinking about this the other day, like most churches are named after saints, like Episcopal churches. Well, we're called Water and Wilderness Church. Like, what are our saints? And I looked around and I'm like, all of this. These trees, it's on the bank of the Potomac River. And it's just so beautiful. And it's And that, by the way, is our baptismal font, is
Yeah,
the
there you go.
Potomac
Oh man,
River.
fabulous.
And so, yeah, anyway,
Man,
that's a little bit about how this got started.
well, I'm so glad you shared that. I know for other people, it's going to be exciting too. And for me personally, 25 years ago, I started a community. We had very similar feelings and attitudes, and it was such a great time. So just, I mean, like, enjoy all of this. These early days of a regular weekly meeting that starts to shape and form, and you watch it happening in real time. I mean, it's not dissimilar to watching a puppy grow up or a toddler to start to walk. Like, it just is this great calling that you see happen right before your eyes. You know, it's like, I remember the third week we met at this church that we'd started 25 years ago called Solomon Sports. It was pretty funky, and it was, you know, we thought it was different, and we wanted it to be different, and we were trying to pursue new things. And I truly remember after the third week, somebody came up and goes, "Hey, I've been here all 3 weeks, and this week we didn't do that thing we did the first 2 weeks. I can't remember what it was, but are we going to do that again?" Like, literally, Pete, like, we're 3 weeks in and they're like, "Hey, that's not how we've always done it." You know, we had 2 weeks, 2 weeks of pattern. And it was so refreshing to be like, oh, we don't end up stuck in patterns because we did something wrong. We end up stuck in patterns because something was meaningful, you know? And change feels like loss for people. So you have to be aware that we're all going to go through a little gain and a little loss, and change can be reinterpreted as giving and letting go. And, you know, there's just all this stuff that's so good about the beginning stages and the beginning days of things.
Yeah.
What
It's easier too.
it is. It has the originators have a whole lot more sway than people do in other systems, right? So anybody who's been part of these first days, you know, our thing lasted about 25 years, and it doesn't exist anymore. And there were people who would say, "Yeah, you know, I came like at year 8, and I never felt like I was part of the original group of people," you know, which was so heartbreaking to me, because I'm like, I saw no difference between year 1 and year 8 people, but they did. And it's just, you start to realize all the human conditions that go into this, but it's also the most transformative community I've ever imagined being a part of. So just congratulations. So thrilled for you. And it's great. Hey, what do you wear when you're out there? Because here's the thing I wanted to bring up with you. All of the roles that you play, right? So we talked about you're a priest, you're a fisherman, you're an author, you're a musician. All of those have like literally outfits and tools that you have, and they kind of go together. And there's a whole putting on of a persona when you step into a certain role, right? What is your when you're now in the water and wilderness church world? What's your persona? What's your stuff? What do you have on? What do you have with you? What do you do?
So I wear a black shirt and a collar.
Okay.
And I started out not doing that.
Okay.
And I'd wear like a flannel shirt, like regular Saturday for Pete.
Yeah.
And because I wanted to really like signal
Yep.
that this isn't an institutional thing, but we are part of the institution, and we want to be, because we want to change from the inside, and it's not that we want to replace anything, but we need
Yes,
a
sir.
mixed ecology now of
There you go.
expressions of church, not just our inherited systems, as Dwight Shiley might say, but like a mixed ecology. This is just part of that.
Nice.
But I realized after a while that it was a good signal both to everybody that saw us in
Mm-hmm.
public, but
Mm-hmm.
also to my people,
Mm.
that we are a Christian church.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I actually wear this usually with
Ah,
jeans,
okay.
um, but I have a guitar slung over my back, right?
Okay.
'Cause I'll play the music. And for a long time, we had a band at my former church when we were doing this just as a service. We ended up with like a 12-person intergenerational band. The oldest guy was 88. He's an Appalachian finger picker. We had kids playing violin and people playing mandolin and guitar and stuff. And so that was really, really cool.
Wow.
That thing is still going at my former church.
Okay.
And some of those folks are a part of this new thing. But yeah, so I've got a guitar. I wear this, jeans, and, hiking boots usually.
Yeah.
And when it's hot, I'll wear shorts and I'll wear this and just sweat my ass off. It's
Yeah.
so like in a black shirt, but and
It's
there's a video
awesome.
out there somewhere of like, I was in the middle of, I tell the story of salvation in a different way. So normally, in a liturgical tradition, you're reading out of the book, these are the prayers. But I'm thinking, if somebody is spiritual but not religious, and that they love nature and they get invited here, I don't want to like make them say a bunch of stuff that
Yeah.
they might one day believe but don't really know what it is.
Right.
And how am I going to explain Jesus in 5 minutes? And so that's what I try to do.
Hmm.
But anyway, I was in the middle of doing that, and there's a guy on the bank, because a lot of people fish there. I fish there a lot. And he's obviously struggling. He's got like a catfish on the line. I can tell by how the pole's moving. And he's got a 4-year-old on the bank, and he's got like a
Yeah.
net. And he's
Yeah.
like, can't do all these things. And I'm like, hey, can somebody help this guy? And this kid turns to me and she's like, well, you're the fisherman. And I'm like, all right. So I run over and like, I think he had the net. I grabbed the pole and like we landed this, I don't know, 6 or 7 pound catfish together. And then everybody cheers and I shake his hand and like pop back up and go over and finish telling a story of
Yeah.
Jesus. And and that's not an interruption, right? Like
That's it.
that was part of our service that day, was we helped
Great.
this guy land his fish. And so you make yourself vulnerable when you're
Mm-hmm.
outside too, in a way that I think we don't in brick and mortar churches.
Yeah. Right.
It's a place of comfort, and we need those places, but we also need expressions of church that require discomfort. And it's 100 degrees. We're out there doing church. We've done it in 5 inches of snow in the middle of a driving snowstorm, because shared challenge is something that draws us together,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's an embodied feeling of being vulnerable, which is part of what the Christian life is about.
Hey, let's talk about this book you have coming up, Catching Hope. And then there's a great subtitle that now I've forgotten, but I bet you haven't. If you got
The hidden spiritual wisdom of fishing.
The Hidden Spiritual Wisdom of Fishing.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Okay, so you are a fisherman, and it seems like you think about fishing not only as an action and an activity, but as not just a metaphor, but as a gateway to actually experiencing something transformative in the fishing itself. Do I have that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you talk about that? Because some people have a really hard time thinking about non-spiritual activities. And this is true across traditions. Like my wife's a yoga instructor, and they're also constantly, as a yoga instructor, trying to help people integrate their yoga into the rest of their lives, right? That it doesn't just happen on the mat. It doesn't just happen in the studio. It's like all the things. There are so many parallels in all the spiritual traditions and the human flourishing traditions overall, trying to help people integrate this stuff. And there can be a real tendency to treat everything else you do as a metaphor for the thing that you think is important. Like fishing is like Christianity and then you make this. But then there's people, and I'm wondering if this is what you're doing. You're saying, and there's actually something transformative in the activity itself that's not just metaphorical. It is actual. Is that the case? And can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. You reminded me of how many times Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is like this. Um, so obviously, fishing requires a ton of patience, which is something that's always in short supply with human beings. And during COVID, I got back into fishing. Grew up fishing with my dad a lot, and I got back into it during COVID. He was like, "Let's fish our ass off next year," and I was like, "Yeah, let's get back into it." And at that time, I was a priest, and I'm just looking at this whole thing differently, and I'm like, "Wow, everything about this is spiritual." First of all, you can't do it from your couch. You've got to get out. You've got to go. You're making a decision to go fishing, but it's just shot through with hope, because you're hoping you're going to catch something, right? Like you wouldn't go if you were like, let's go and not catch something for 3 hours. No, you're hoping that you do. And I'm remembering, like, as a kid, the night before we would go, I'd pick take my tackle box out and I clean everything.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at these little lures like, you're going to catch a bass and you're going to catch a bluegill, and
Wow.
this is like
Awesome.
this anticipation and this hope. And it's so like Advent, where we're anticipating and the coming of Christ, right? And this Jesus is just around the corner all the time,
Yeah.
and just under the surface. So what you're fishing for, you can't see, right?
Yeah.
So you're having to look around and read the beach and read the
Hmm.
landscape to know where might fish be.
Hmm.
And then you go there, right, based on what you know about fish, and your certain species of fish, and then you put yourself in the best possible in the best case scenario to try to catch one. But you also never know. Like, you never know. You can have the best bait, the right place in the water column, the right time of day. It's when they're feeding, it's when they're migrating. And you throw something out there and you see them all around, and it just doesn't happen.
Hmm.
And then when you do catch a fish or you have one on the line, you feel like this energy of like, oh my God, something unseen did see my lure and
Huh.
grabbed it.
Yeah.
And
Right
now
on.
we're in relationship. And I mean, fish evolved 450 billion years ago, which is half of the life
Wow. Okay.
of
Yeah.
our youngest star. So they're so old, and you have this life force that's running through. I could go on and on and on, but
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Can you talk? Okay. So I'm just going to sort of ask you to reflect a little bit on the fact that you can go on and on and on about this. Like, that strikes me as not only something about fishing, but also seems like it's a personality element of you, right? Like finding
did I talk too much?
no, that you find that you. Oh, on this podcast, you won't seem like you talk too much. Too much. There's some of us who really talk too much, but you're able to find this meaning, and you're able to take an activity and to understand what you're doing while you're experiencing it, right? There's a not everyone can do that. Like, some other people who fish might hear that and be like, "Oh yeah, that's totally." But I've never thought of that. Like, you strike me as someone in the description you've given about your life in Christian spirituality and then in church and going to seminary and working inside the structure and creating something and fishing, that you're saying, like, you're paying attention to not only what the thing you're doing, you're actually doing it, you're fully in it, but at some point you can also consider what it is that you're doing, right? You have this third relationship to the thing that you're doing. There's an observer and an interpreter and a meaning maker out of all of that. Does that make any sense? Do you think about it that way? Have you thought about that? Do you think about that at all?
Yeah. And the meaning maker just pops up out of nowhere sometimes.
Yeah.
And you have time, like when you're fishing, you have time. And so you think about certain things when you're testing out a spot, and just being in a place where nature used to be untouched.
Yeah.
And there's a scent of the eternal
Mm.
in those places, especially around water. I called the church Water and Wilderness Church because Christians are water people. And the first line of the Bible is that God's breath blew over the face of the deep.
Mm-hmm.
And so water was there in the very beginning. And I think that life is just so hard for all of us. And it's especially hard when we're not reflective about what's going on. Life is lived forwards, but understood backwards. And I think many people have said that. It's not original.
Well, I haven't heard it. Seems sounded original to me. That was
I
a pretty
just
good
didn't,
line.
trying to be honest with everybody.
You heard it from someone? Heard it
And
from a guy?
I think a
Yeah.
good fisherman is a contemplative.
Huh.
And that old saying of it's not called catching, it's called fishing, because there's something about
Yeah.
the doing of it that itself is beauty. And Martin Luther said if he knew the world would end tomorrow, he would plant an apple tree today.
Hmm.
And this doing of something
Hmm.
regardless of the result because it's a good thing to do,
Oh yeah, yeah, I see.
I think applies to me, applies to fishing, and it can apply in many other areas too. But yeah, I think about those things. I think most fishermen do. I was in Portugal. Last thing I'll say about this, and I was talking to some fishermen, and they said there's a saying there that there's live men, there's dead men, and there's fishermen. And it's because when you're fishing
Nice.
in that area, we're in the Azores, and like
Yeah.
when you're ocean fishing, like you are close to death in a certain way, and you're also close to life. So you're
Yeah.
in this liminal space, the edge of the water, the
Yeah,
edge
totally.
of God's
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
fingertips, um, and you never know what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
So
Well,
how can you not
that's
be?
interesting. I think people who've paid a lot of attention to ancient cultures and communities and all this, they they point out that for a lot of people, for a lot of time on the earth, whatever water's edge they lived near was functionally the end of the earth for them, right? Like that's kind of where it ended. They didn't go further. They didn't know what was further. There was sort of an edge, and then it became an unknown.
Hmm.
And in our society, most of what happens under the water of this earth, which the earth is mostly the waters, is unknown. I mean, it's unknown at the depths of the ocean, of course, but it's also unknown in our lakes and our streams and what's happening. Like, it's curious, as much as we know as human beings about some things, what's going on under the water? I mean, it's really a mystery, isn't it? Like, it is the reservoir that holds, next to air, the single most important element that a human being and most other animals are going to have to contend with. If you don't have water after a while, that's that, And it's such a deep mystery. And there's something about our world now where we just kind of ride on top of it and fly over it and swim in it. But there's not a lot of mystery around water and where it is and what's in there and how it works and all that. And people who fish or do oceanography, other ocean things, they're always like, oh man, I'm thinking about the ocean. I'm thinking about the waves. I'm thinking about the lakes. I think about the rivers. I think about the fish all the time. Like, there's another depth of the human experience that these people are thinking about.
There is a lot of mystery in all those waters. We just drive right by it. I used to look at these swamps. You drive in and you see a little bit of water over there somewhere and not a lot of
Yeah.
depth to it, And I used to imagine, and this wouldn't be true, but it was true for me then. God, there must be a huge fish. No one has fished this place. They're like, what living thing
Uh,
is in there, And I think that is what our souls are like too,
it
Doug.
is.
Like
Yep. That's great.
the depth of our souls it is as deep as the ocean and as
Oh, that's great.
mysterious. And
Mm.
so for me, fishing is like understanding yourself and what
Yeah.
God's doing underneath the day to day
Yeah.
and underneath the surface emotion, or desire or regret.
Mm.
What is God doing? And if what church helps us do is read the beach
Mm.
and read the landscape so you can see, what? There's deeper water over there. Bigger fish are almost always in deeper water
Mm-hmm.
and fish-like structure. So let's go over to that place. 90% of the fish are in 10% of the water. Did you know this?
I did not know this.
Yes.
See, there you go.
90% of the fish are in 10% of the water. So if you're looking for God and you're
Huh.
looking for
Oh.
yourself, um, you don't want to be in that 90% of the water that only has 10% of the fish.
Wow.
You want to, and you learn where that is by learning the patterns of fish, the patterns of God, the patterns of yourself.
Yeah.
So that you can get to a place where you have some better success. When I talk to church people, I say, look, church is dying, right? We all know that. And it probably should in certain ways. But if we want to catch different fish, like, you got to use different bait. I mean, we look
Pretty
at
simple.
what the bait. This is the bait we're using.
Yeah.
And mainline traditions are getting older, and they're very white for the most part. And where it's like, where are all the young fish? Like, we want different kinds of people to come to our church, but we're not willing to change the lure. So if you're using cut bait, you might be able to catch some catfish, but you're not going to catch a bluegill because that's not what they eat. So the church needs to figure out how to read the beach and then adjust what it's doing. But every organization is like this.
Yes,
and for ourselves, like, how many times have we done the same thing over and over again? And you're like, what? Still not catching what I really want.
Yeah.
Well, change the bait.
That's great. That's a great thought. Hey, all right, I want to mix a metaphor here into our next topic. I think all over the country, but certainly where I live in Minnesota, invasive species are a real problem in the water, and certain fish, predator fish, have been introduced into the water and are destroying many other kinds of fish that are in the waters, right? So, and some mussels or some zebra mussels have been an invasive species. So there's some things changing in the ecosystem of the fish. There's my hard pivot as a metaphor. In Christian society, I feel like there's some predatory fish, and I feel like there's some invasive species in Christianity that are changing it. Yeah. And I think the rise of certain kind of American and expressions of Christianity, and some global expressions as well, of Christian nationalism and of selfish-focused spirituality and all of this, it's changing what people want. And the population of America is growing in churches that are increasingly sectarian and cruel, and churches that aren't. Like, almost every church that I know that is open and inclusive struggles for success enough to even be sustainable. Churches that are exclusionary and binary and mean-spirited, in my estimation, parking lots full of people. Now, I think I like the interpretation that, Christianity is never stagnant as a people movement, how it's talked about. I think there's versions of Christianity that are alive and well in the United States that are basically a fan fiction version of Jesus following, that have almost nothing to do with the storyline that you get out of the Gospels or that you get out of Jesus. They're created nearly from whole cloth as these alternative narratives about what we should be up to. It's really a problem. And a lot of progressive Christians that I hang around with have not found it to be their concern to worry about the popular cultural narrative of Christianity. Like, how is it out in the world? What do people think about? What do they have access to? What do they even know about? The number of people that you and I probably know who will say, in fact, one of the reasons I don't do church anymore is because some of the things these people are doing. And now that's a tale as old as, hanging around Jesus, where someone's like, I don't like the hypocrites. But I feel like we're in the stage where something else is up and something's going on. So I don't mean to put any words in your mouth with that long setup or question, but I also saw some of the social posts that you've been doing as a public person and as a priest, asking people to think about their public Christianity, not just their internal life, not just their life in their own church community or their immediate area, but hey, there's some things happening in our world. And I've noticed you stepping out in those areas. I think it's wonderful. So that's a long setup, no question, but respond any way you want to all of that. And if I have you right on what the work is that you're also trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, those people aren't Christian. I'll just say that. Like, that's not Christianity. That's not. They're not. So even the phrase Christian nationalism is false. You cannot be Christian and nationalist. Now, all of us are trying to be Christians. It is an aspiration that we all fall short of. So in a very real sense, none of us are Christians. We try.
Nice.
But what we are aiming for, I think it was Toni Morrison, but it might have been Maya Angelou, who said when people say to them, I'm Christian, she'll say, already? Like, already? And I think that's the greatest posture to have. But the mainline churches have not asked of their people anything over the last decades. And even during the civil rights movement, that letter from a Birmingham jail that Martin Luther King Jr. wrote was to the white church.
Yeah.
And the people that were standing on the side, and they're standing on the side again.
Yeah.
I hear from people all the time. It really blows my mind how many people watch these videos. And they're saying, I thank you for saying something.
Yeah.
And in the church, there are people like William Barber, like Mary Embody, who are in the ways that they can, being prophetic. But by and large, the church has become a country club and a place of safety. It's really hard to do this well. Like, no one's doing this really well.
No doubt.
Because church needs to be a place of comfort. You know, like if you've lost a child or had a child, you should find comfort and safety in a worship service on Sunday. And that's a large span. And people don't want to get hit over and over and over again with politics. But politics should absolutely be talked about, because the gospel is about how we live well with one another. The term ethnios is where we get, that's the Greek word for Gentiles. That's where we get ethnicities. This whole thing is about Jesus unlocking, what they called salvation, eternal life, which is not an afterlife thing. It's a now life thing, unlocking that for everybody.
Yeah.
But we have been too focused on keeping people happy and comfortable in their church, and not wanting to. I think it's very hard. I have friends that are like, Pete, I can't say what you said.
Yeah, I get it all the time.
And
too.
I was in a purple church for about a year. It was purple-ish. I heard about it every now and again, and I'd pick my spots. You can't swing at every pitch, but I think a question that I have is, in this day and age, what is going on? I was taught, and I fought with my liturgy professor a lot about this. He said the liturgy is the greatest teacher. And I was like, well, I didn't know shit till I got to seminary. So it didn't teach me anything.
It didn't work.
But what if it's true that we learn by doing, and we do, but we don't really do that much in a mainline church service? This is where evangelicals are miles ahead, years ahead. Is I completely disagree with the meaning of Jesus, the whole point of this thing. But I love that the problem is it's not just a personal faith.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's the people Israel were a people. Like,
that's right.
It is a corporate thing that we're doing. But when they get in the car, they're like, Jesus, keep us safe on the roads.
Yeah.
They pray and they invest in that relationship. Whereas when people come to an Episcopal church or mainline church, I'm doing the church service at you. Do you remember in the Barbie movie where Ken was like, can I play my guitar at you?
Yeah.
And it's really funny because it's not for you, it's at you.
Yeah.
But that's so often how we do our mainline services. Like, I'm up there, I'm elevated above you, I'm behind the altar because I'm special. I'm wearing this collar, and I have a master's, Doug, in divinity. like, like we're even called like how. So that makes everybody feel
and
really
one who
different.
is revered.
Right.
Yes, as the
Right.
reverend. Yeah.
And as part of what our wilderness church is trying to like lower all that stuff, but you're not much is required of you,
Yeah.
and I hate that, because then when people are asked to describe their faith, and I never was until I got to seminary, until I wanted to go, and then they were like, "Tell me about what God has done in your life," and I was like, "No one's ever asked me that before." So churches have not asked or formed their people well, and the way we do our service is creates this mentality that I come here to be filled,
Yeah.
and I, rather than I bring my whole self, my broken self, and I'm a part of this whole thing that we're doing together.
Right.
And I'm speaking generally. There are churches that are different.
Sure.
There,
Of course. Yeah.
in every church, there are people that are more faithful than I'll ever be. But on the whole, I think I heard just the other day, somebody was like, I'm afraid to talk about my faith because I don't want to be confused with those people. And the way
Yeah.
that we're not confused with those people is that we're able to articulate what Jesus means to us.
Yeah.
And so that's part of what I'm trying to do, is for all the people that don't go to church, for all the people that are waiting for a priest to say something. And there's tons of us out there, by the way. And Joseph Yu, I think is one of my favorites. He's so great. Sam Sheridan is another one. They are in their own way holding a candle up and saying, like, we're on this side, and
Yep.
this is what we believe, and using these tools to communicate, like, hey, because you have to say it. That's not us.
Yes.
That's not Jesus. But then also say, this is what Jesus is. Like, Jesus is hope and love and mercy and forgiveness. And for anybody who doesn't believe those things, wouldn't you want to? Like, wouldn't you want to believe? Wouldn't you want to be? It's like, well, I don't believe in that. Cool. But wouldn't you want to? That like God that created everything, which is not an old gray man in the sky, but something ethereal and mysterious and eternal, some kind of force, like, has a little bit of preference for you and for everybody else, and is doing something that's so crazy that even that the worst things that happen to you sometimes become the gifts in your life, like, in that it's all about love and justice and mercy and forgiveness. If you didn't believe that, wouldn't you want to?
That's wonderful.
If you would, that's what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, man, I appreciate you being out about this stuff. I think one of Jesus's more powerful teaching tools and rhetoric approaches was you have heard it said, but I say to you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we live in that time right now. We live in a time where a lot of us who have something to say should say, no, I get it. I hear what you've heard. I know that's what you think. I'm just going to give you an alternative. There is this. And when we think the alternative is to be more silent about our spirituality because we think that our actions are going to speak louder than words, they don't. They don't speak louder than words. They do other things that are really, really good. But very few people appreciate a silent film or a mime presentation.
Right.
I mean, you can do all the interpretive acts to figure out what's going on in a silent film and watch somebody street perform with no words. That just takes as someone just whispering to you and saying, hey, here's what's going on in the world or in church or all the rest of, I grew up without going to church. So I didn't have, I've had my head on a swivel going to churches for 40 plus years now. And it's like, hey, I'm still trying to figure out what these people are doing. And, I have those degrees and have been in a lot of them. It's still awfully confusing. And then the world gets super confusing. Like, what are we up to? And what are we doing? And so anybody who in this, look, I'm not going to critique St. Francis for saying, always preach the gospel and when necessary, use words. Fair enough. We're now in it's necessary time. If you have words to use, please use them because there is so much communication going on. and so much framing and reframing of Christianity in America and what we should do, that there are many, many people, some people who, maybe you're like me, people who I've known from years ago who didn't used to believe things that they believe now that I think are really harmful to their love of neighbor, their spirituality, their faith, hope, and love is being trampled upon because they bought into a whole theory that I know they didn't believe 15 years ago or 5 years ago, but they've bought into something new. So I feel like there's a spiritual movement happening in America, and it's not going in a way that is fulfilling a faith, hope, and love kind of narrative.
No,
So
it's true.
it's odd to be a part and observer to something in our society and being like, oh, something's on fire here, and people are catching on to it, and it's not good.
It's worse than we think it is. And I want to lift up a couple more voices. Melanie Mullen in Washington, D.C., Lauren Grubal Thomas in Colorado, Emily Donovan in Virginia. These are all people you can find on any social media platform, do a really great job of lifting up their voice in protest in different ways. What I loved about Bishop Marianne is when she had an opportunity, she simply asked for mercy, and she was gentle but firm. And the temptation is to stay angry and then lash back out.
Yes.
And I usually watch my videos a few times to see, do I believe all of what I just said? Can I stand behind that? And how is my tone? Because tone is important.
Yeah.
But we're in a really, really bad way. And we can make it worse by putting off even more people. And it is on us to be the bigger people in this moment. But we have Jesus as a model. And we have the disciples too, who all of them were murdered afterwards. But they kept doing what they believed in.
Yeah.
And, we're too rich as a country for people to want to actually do that, to actually give a lot of their things away. And, once you have a lot, then you want to keep it, which is part of the problem too. But can I say this too? The opportunity is also here for people who disagree with the Charlie Kirks of the world, and the Donald Trumps of the world, and all of their supporters. I'm with you. But we have a role. We played a role in how we got here.
That's it.
We played a role in how we got here because of our own disdain for people that were different than us, because of our own moral superiority, our own unchecked righteousness, and I think, for example, when we say defund the police, that's a problem because most people don't want to defund the police, and we need the police, right? Like when bad things happen, now we need them to not kill unarmed black men, and most of them don't. We need a demilitarized police, but that tells, like, the language that we use matters, and that wasn't a good phrase because it's telling everybody else that we're really just for lawlessness, and we're not for lawlessness. We're for police reform, for good policing.
Yeah.
You could go to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, take a look around.
That's right.
But do you know what I mean? And
I do.
Just like New York liberal elite, like I don't like them either. Like,
Yeah.
because I hear the way they talk about me, country music listening, truck driving, SEC football watching, red-blooded American
religious guy. Yeah.
religious guy. And I hear the way that they talk about people that I know and love.
Yeah.
And it's disdainful. And don't forget, Hillary Clinton called everybody that voted for Donald Trump a basket of deplorables. That's awful. And that's a mistake. We all misspeak, right? But how we handle ourselves in this moment is really important. And I look to people like King, like Bishop Marianne, Jonathan Daniels, Fannie Lou Hamer, Ruby Sales, and we can't lay down. We need to speak. We need to be loud. William Barber, and we can't lose our own humanity in that process.
That's right. Yeah. I think the phrase faith, hope, and love is really beautiful, and I've held it for a lot of my Christianity as sort of a frame of phrases, and that comes from a passage, that the early Christian apostle Paul was tapping into that already existed. He didn't make it up, and he was reminding that three things will withstand all of life: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. And I think that last little bit is kind of where a lot of people find themselves. There's a lot of people with shaken faith. Faith in each other, faith in themselves, faith in our institutions, faith in religion, faith as a religious term. They might not have a lot of that. Hope can be in, hard to spare for a lot of people who feel like, the pond outside their house had a toxic spill in it, and no matter how much they hope to catch a fish, there's nothing in there anymore, and they feel like hope is gone.
Yeah.
But love is a different thing. If you're lost in hope and you can't find it, if your faith is diminished, you can act in love. You can tell the truth in love. You can love doesn't have to be conditional in that sort of way that a lot of us interpret faith and hope and some of the rest. So maybe start with what's the greatest of them and start working your way into something like hope and faith, because that truly is transformative. Like it's that no religion owns love, no theory owns love. It seems to be amongst the trees, in the soil root level of care and consideration. So calling each other to love and to morality. I've been surprised how in the work that we do at forthcoming Good, which is, we try to articulate Christian spirituality in democratic spaces, and how many people right now, how many organizations, left-leaning organizations, democratic kind of organizations, want religious leaders to step up and make moral claims about what's happening, claims of morality. And the number of times I've been in meetings this week in Seattle and all over the country that people will say, hey, we need to get our faith leaders together because they can speak about ICE behavior or internment camps or USAID cuts or any of this stuff. They can talk about it from a moral vantage point. Now, Pete, there's part of me that thinks, okay, that's great. Churches, religious leaders get to step in and have a role, but it's also a real problem in society where on certain progressive side or certain side of the political aisle, people are grappling for a moral framework. And that's a project that, look, religious people should do their part, but we also should help build a stronger moral argument for all kinds of things, right? Like, it's been a funny deal to be in this work I've been in publicly for 30 years or whatever, and kind of move through postmodern deconstructionism. But none of us were ever suggesting there wouldn't be morals. Like, that's what the hardcore modernists were saying, is you won't have any morals. And then you look around, you're like, have we actually all given up on on just the rightness and wrongness of things? And
these
everything.
Are like liberal-leaning people that are saying this?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, so there's like a whole other podcast
Yes.
where I want to talk about like that craziness.
We should do
because
that.
it's
Yeah,
like, we don't want to go to church anymore. We don't need church to be good people, which is true.
it's true.
And then you go over there and like, we can be good people over here. And it's like,
No one's working
now
on
we
that
want church to
project.
tell us about morals. And it's like, well, sure. But like, why did you leave?
I'm
But I
telling
know why
you,
they left,
it's
because they weren't getting what we have, and they
yes.
weren't being asked to participate.
And I'm telling to all of our pastor friends, I'm just like, look, you can start queuing up that, start seeing some things through some terms that feel to people like you're speaking the truth about true things, like some morality. I don't know. We're just in an interesting period here where I think there's a spiritual movement that's poisoning the water, and progressive people are being called to become a voice of moral clarity. And I don't know. It's just a curious spot. Hey, I'm going to give one little plug and also an invitation. This is a Harvey Milk moment for me to recruit you and anybody else you know to be in on this thing. In January, we're going to launch on the first Tuesday, I think it's January 8th, an online live experience called Electionary. So it takes the model of the lectionary, a passage from Jewish text, gospel, a New Testament, a song, a poem, all this stuff. So there's a structure for this, and every Tuesday night from first January and first Tuesday in January through Election Day, to frame a way to have the subtitle is Biblical Reflections on this election. And so there's going to be a different person giving a little homily, a few minutes. There'll be original music each week. There'll be poetry. So it's kind of a thing that we're creating to sort of give a structure to talk specifically about the issues that are facing people in this election, not in a partisan way, in a much better way than just simply, the partisan bit. So if you'd be up for being one of the participants in it, however you want, if you want to make poetry, if you want to do a song, if you want to do a homily, and any people there's 43 of them, so it's a lot to fill, and it's different people sort of every week. So it's a big spreadsheet that's going into making this thing happen. But if you'd be interested in that, we'd love to have you be part of it. And this is the first time we're talking about it, frankly. Yeah.
In front of your millions of listeners, so
yeah.
I can't say anything. But
well,
yeah,
and I can't not have you. No.
I'd be honored to be a part of that.
Great.
One more thing. The water is polluted, and what you're doing is helping. I think what Water and Wilderness Church does helps.
That's
and great. Oysters filter 50 gallons. One oyster filters 50 gallons of water a day. And so what you do with polluted environments, a lot of times in marine environments, is you want to plant oyster beds, because at the bottom, they filter water and they make your water cleaner. And so what our churches need to do, and our nonprofits like you and Vote Common Good, is to be those oyster beds. But that it takes the bad water in, and then it pushes good water out, and it doesn't just hold everything in. And so that's what we need to do, is to plant oyster beds.
Also makes me never want to eat oyster again. So whatever's in those things.
They're amazing.
I don't know how that magic happens. They take all the
God, man.
Yeah, there it is. There's some alchemy going on inside that oyster somewhere. That's a beautiful image. Thank you for your book. So this is Pete Nunnally, and he's a priest of Water and Wilderness Church, author of the upcoming book on fishing. By the way, is your book Catching Hope going to be out in the spring, Christmas time? What gift buying season is it?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked. It is available for pre-order now.
Okay.
On Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com. That's Catching Hope: The Hidden Spiritual Wisdom of Fishing. Release date May 16th, 2026, just in time for Father's Day.
I was going to say Father's Day, Mother's Day. That's big gift buying times for people who might want a book about fishing. So coming out in May of 2026. Pete, thank you. Anything else you want to say to the good people?
If you're in the DC area, give me a shout. Come, I'll get a cup of coffee with you. Come worship with us. This church isn't just located in DC. It's located in your heart. So wherever you are, you're a member of the watershed of Water and Wilderness Church.
Well, okay. So I'm going to be in I have a thing to do in West Virginia on the 18th. This deal. And by the way, I had no idea how close parts of West Virginia were to Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Saying something about my own, sense of geography. But like when I said to them, hey, what airport should I fly into? And they're like, well, the closest one is probably Dulles. And I was like, wow, there's 2 airports called Dulles? No, there's not. There's one. It just happens to be the nearest airport. So I've been saying that. So anyway, I have this thing Saturday, and then we have a thing in D.C. on Monday that we're going to be doing. And I'm like, what am I going to, saying to myself, like, wonder what I'm going to do on Sunday. Now I know what I'm going to do on Sunday.
Come on.
I'm gonna get in a kayak, and I'm gonna come kayaking by, and then I'm gonna stop just at the right time and run up the bank and have people there say, "It happened again. Somebody just stumbled onto the." No, I will be glad to join you at that thing if it's still open to the public and lets anybody randomly show up, because I love that kind of scene. So if anybody else is in the DC area and you want a friend to go with you on the 19th of October, let's make a run on the Water and Wilderness Church down in the Potomac.
That's it. Our website is waterandwilderness.org. That's it.
I was just going to ask, like, the Potomac is big, so where will I find it? But I'm sure the website will tell me. Okay, well, thank you so much, friend, and thanks for all the goodness that you do in the world, and to all of our listeners and people in the chat here. You probably realize this already, people watching, that we didn't pull any comments onto the screen because we ran this live, but we also pre-recorded it. But the reason we run it live, if you've stuck around this long, is because there's so much good interaction that goes on with people in the chats inside whatever social media or YouTube channel you're on, where you're able to interact with each other. So that's why we choose to run these things live. We're not trying to trick anybody. We just think it's good to have you all be contributing with each other and talking to each other on the side while we're doing whatever it is we're doing. So, all right. Father Pete, thank you. And to all of you, thanks for being a part of the Common Good podcast.
Thank you, Doug. It's been awesome. Great to see you. Take care.